Yeah.
Yeah.
21. Go back. So.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm Ashley Rayback. I am the secretary of District 2, but I'm the only executive board member still standing. So I am here conducting the meeting, and I'll be doing notes too, but luckily Hannah Peterson, who's also part of our board, is able to help us out. So welcome. One thing to note, in the past, we've had to have microphones passed around for even questions or anything. Now we have a new sound system, so the people on Zoom can hear everything. So if you have a side conversation going, please step out in the hall because the people on Zoom will be hearing it. But, so the nice thing is if you're asking a question, we don't have to run to you with the mic. However, we do have a mic, so if you're talking and people can't hear, we've got one to bring it up. So let's go ahead and start. First, we're gonna start with Truth and Taxation, the Provo City Library, and we're gonna have Director of Travel Board. The Carla sounds so official, it's fancy.
I'm glad to be here and answer any questions that you might have. I have a presentation with a few slides, but we have 15 minutes. So if there's questions, jump in at any time. We can ask questions at the end too, but any place where you feel like you don't understand or you want more details, I'll try to do my best. And I can also at the very end, if you want to learn more, I can some additional details as well. So let's go to, there it is. Aha. The City Council office put together this great little infographic. Talks about kind of what's going on. 87% of our funding does come from property taxes. So that is a huge amount. So if we need more money, we have to go to property taxes in order to increase what we're spending at all. Yeah.
Can you lift the mic?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to be like
Right into it. Okay. Yes. So, and that rate was increased last year to get an extra $100,000. We had a plan to raise it like in little increments over the next 5 years, but we had something happen this past year that made it so we just didn't feel like we could keep dipping into our reserves, and we needed to just get to a balanced budget as quickly as we possibly could. And so we had that increase last year, and then we hadn't asked for an increase since 2000. So we went 22 years without asking for an increase. But the time has come. We have reached a point where we either need to cut services or we need to have more revenue coming in. There it is. So this is kind of where revenue comes from. Like I said, most of it is property taxes. There are two other additional tax revenues that we have. One is a vehicle tax and one is a tax redemption prior year. And this is one of the problems we've had in the last couple of years. And those two revenue sources have decreased. And I asked why, and nobody knows. Something about the vehicle taxes. The prior year redemption is like late taxes. So if taxes are late and they're still not getting paid, then that's not going to go in. It's an estimate, and they've been coming in $200,000 to $300,000 less than what they were telling us they would be. So that's going to hit us pretty hard. And our reserve was there to kind of compensate in years when that might happen. But again, we just need to stop dipping into that. They have reduced that revenue estimate for this coming fiscal year, which was one of the reasons why we had this big gap is those revenues went down. And so we were getting less, so our deficit was going to be more. If that makes sense. The thing we have control over, like people sometimes say, just increase your fees. Even if we doubled our library fees, that's 2% of our budget. Like that's not going to make a big enough difference. Our room rentals are about 3%. We did just barely increase those. So our revenues for the next year are going to be higher there. So where we have control, we have tried to increase our revenues. Our used books is like 1%. Interest income, we do have that savings account. We do get interest on that. And right now interest rates are high, which is great. We are getting more revenue there. So that's where we are funded from. That property tax breakdown, this is also City Council's graphic, but you can see that the city gets 6% of your property tax. The library gets 4% of the, is that 4% of the, oh no, I see. Okay. So library gets 4%. general operations get 6% and bonds get 8%. So together it's 18% of your property tax goes to Provo. So we're just that little 4% chunk right there. And then we talk about our expenses. So the library is, most of our expenses are personnel, which is usual for a lot of organizations and most libraries. We actually have a lower percentage of our budget going to personnel than most libraries because we rely really heavily on part-time staff, which you don't have benefits for those, and so we run a little cheaper that way. But still, a major part of our budget does go to personnel. You can kind of see like, well, you guys do a lot of programming, cut that. Well, our programming is like 2% of our budget. Like it's just not, most of that is personnel. And then we have our building costs, which we have a big, beautiful building, but it does cost to keep going. We have this, which one? Overheads. So those are chargebacks that we pay to the city for use of their HR and their facilities and their finance departments. So we're paying the city our portion of the software and things that they're using to help us run. So we don't have to have our own HR and all that. So that's what the overheads are. Collections would be buying books and ebooks and audiobooks and all of those things. Technology, we do have computers, we have to pay for website hosting and the app hosting and like all of those things. Like we have costs that are associated with those. This last year, our capital projects was 10%. So we had some huge capital projects. We're getting a new chiller. It's in the building. They say it's going to be running in a couple weeks. It's been quite a journey, but that was $500,000 to get that replaced because it's such a big building. Well, 2 buildings, and you need one unit to cover that whole thing. And then our parking garage was having some water damage, and so we're having to do some things to repair cracks, make it waterproof, replace some of the joints. And then I'll just, the last part of that was almost $200,000, about another $100,000-ish to finish up that project and make it so that our underground structure is not deteriorating and we keep it structurally sound, which is very important. So this is kind of 20 years ago, well 25 years ago, when we moved to a new building, they moved our tax rate up to the maximum amount possible. So it was a full 100% mill levy. We were getting all of that because they knew with this new bigger building, it was going to cost more and all of that. They got in and found that they didn't need that much money to run it. And so with their excess every year, they put it into our ending fund balance or our savings account. And that worked, but about 10 years in, you know, inflation and all of that reached a point where we were having a balanced budget, and then we hit a point where we weren't. And so we had this huge savings account, which was, I think it was up to almost $5 million. So our, which is about our operating budget now. So they didn't feel comfortable going to taxpayers at that point. The decision was made, let's pull out of the ending fund balance for a few years and kind of use that. And then at some point we will ask for a tax increase and stop pulling out of that ending fund balance. This is that point. We were able to pull out of it. We are now down at a point, it's at 1.5 million. We'd like to have it closer to 2 million because that's about 35%, which is what government is recommended to have in their savings for their 35% of their operating budget should be in savings so that you have that for when things are hard. So you can see that over the last, how many years is here? 7 years, our gap has been kind of consistent. The things that are going up is this yellow line, which is personnel, because people cost money. And then the other thing is this one down here, which is our building expenses, our capital expenses. So you can see that our library expenses, these lines are all pretty consistent. They haven't gone up a lot over the last few years. It's that personnel, which people just want to be paid. The city's been great and has given us COLAs and our merit increases every year and all of those things, but that just adds to the amounts. It's going to go up over time. And that's what you see there. So that's where we're at. And we just need the revenue, those top 2 lines, we need those to be the same lines. So our revenues and our expenses equal each other. So the reason why, I kind of mentioned some of the reasons already, why we're hitting that this year is inflation is hitting us, as it is hitting everyone. Things are costing more, and we're trying to keep our costs as minimal as possible, but nobody can ignore costs going up. Like I said, the personnel money, like it's just, you're gonna pay people more. Building costs, we need to start saving for all of those building issues. I don't know if you built a house before, but it's great for about 20 years, and then that's when everything starts needing to be replaced or repaired and kept up. So those building costs are not gonna disappear. That's something we need to keep an eye on. We've got a 5-year plan of the things we know might be coming due to be replaced, like our chiller. We've got a boiler in a couple years, things like that. So we need to make sure we have that savings so that when those bigger things come due, we have that. There was lower than expected tax revenues, like I said, $200,000-$300,000 less in those other revenues, not the property tax one, but the previous and the vehicle taxes were down. And then our savings has just been depleted over the year, and we need to stop doing that, have a balanced budget so we can start building that up and have it ready to sustain us in times when we have building costs or revenue shortfalls or all of that. So, this is a pretty picture of our ending fund balance. You can see over the years, it is a down. We don't like it to be down. We want it to start climbing up a little bit. We have made cuts. So the initial cost was $800,000 was what our deficit was. We had about $300,000 through some building costs. We have an endowment that helps us with our building, and so we're pulling more money out of the endowment now because again, that high interest rate, we have more savings in there. So we're trying to cover some of our building costs with that. Took it out of the regular budget. 10% is great in book and ebook budgets. So we've already pulled that out. We are eliminating, unless I can find a way not to, the movies and streaming music that use Canopy or Freebairn. That's probably going to go away at the end of this calendar year. We will only be doing local art shows in the attic. We cut that because we can't afford to bring in other exhibits. They're expensive and they're cool. The National Geographic ones, all of those, like they're very fun, but they are very expensive. So we cut those. We postponed some technology updates. We actually got an almost $300,000 grant from UETN to help us update some of our electronics and our technology. And so we think for the next couple of years, we won't need to have quite as much in that technology update because we're doing a bunch of updates using that grant. So we can pull some out of there. And then we were able to recognize some personnel savings through turnovers. And well, the full-time staff got a cost of living increase. We did not give that to the part-time staff, which we can do for a year or two. But again, some of our part-time staff are earning $10 an hour. Like at some point, they will want to go work at McDonald's instead of working for us. So we have to keep an eye on those. Right now, we seem to be fine, but that's kind of how we tried to make up some of that money. So that we were only asking for $500,000. So this is that again, and this is the end of my presentation. And how did we do on time? Did I talk fast?
6:15, so we can do a few questions.
6, yeah. Yeah.
So I was at the city council meeting where they voted on the truth in taxation. And in the citizen comment section, some people floated the idea of sort of putting the library's revenues together with general fund. I personally have seen this special slice of the property tax as a privileged position for the library to be in, kind of like the earmark for education in the Utah budget, right? All income tax goes to education. So, but I am curious, like moving forward beyond this conversation this year, you said that the plan was for the library to, make modest requests over a few years, right? Before this really inflated. And so will we have to have this same process, the truth in taxation process for every little bump? Is that kind of the consequence of that special slice of the property tax?
Yeah, that is where we are getting almost all of our income through property tax, or our revenue through property tax. The only way for us to increase that is through a truth in taxation. And because our slice of that doesn't go up with your property values going up, it only goes up with new builds. And so for any increase, for me to get any more money from an individual homeowner, I have to go through the truth in taxation process. And it's been compared to like the water conservatory, like they, I think, do a little one every year and then everybody kind of gets used to it. I don't think we'll have to do it every year. I really don't want to. This has been a lot of work. But we probably will every few years, and that's just the way it is set up. But it is nice to have our dedicated money so that it is just for the library, and I don't have to fight the police. Because the police win because we all should see. Oh, no. Any other questions? Well, if you think of any, you know where I'm at. I'm at the library. Feel free to drop me an email or a call. I mean, yeah.
So when is the council approving this and how do we share our opinion?
August 13th at 6 o'clock, there'll be a supervision hearing there. You can email the city council or you can come to the hearing. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I was looking at my property taxes and the way the valuations are, my valuation went down, so my taxes went down. So how's that? I mean, if that's across the board what's happening in the city, will that affect how much you're getting for the library? Because it just feels like it's not actually increasing the amount that would actually be going to the library.
If your property value went down.
Yeah, and even with the tax increase.
Yeah, I think that is, I talked to somebody else on the city council. Oh, Justin. I was gonna say, other people know this better than me.
I don't know if it's better. Maybe I'll just confuse you more. So the way that the system, that the state has set up the system is that taxing entities like the city can receive no more revenue than they did the prior year. The only way, and Carla alluded to this and talked about, new revenue comes through new builds. So whether you've got vacant property that now has something built on it, it has a larger taxable value as a building as opposed to vacant land. So as values go up, rates go down, and vice versa, as values go down, rates go up. But that's on a whole over, you know, the entire city. The valuation of the property in the city is roughly $10 billion. It's very different for your individual property though. So some folks will see, you know, overall over the city, we saw a slight increase in the total valuation. So the rate went down. That's how the rates are set by the tax commission. But your individual property, for some reason, however, the county assesses that individual property, decided that the value went down. So you saw a rate reduction. Others will, a total dollar amount reduction, where others will see an increase. And that's where it gets weird, right? You've got roughly 30,000 residential homes in Provo. So it's very different depending on the property. What I would say is if you have specific questions about your valuation, and we'll share this, we've got some information on the website now where I'm happy to talk to you after, but we'll also go through the hearing on the 13th. But questions specific to valuation, that's really all up to the county assessor. And they've got some resources that we've tried to share with individuals, but they did the best one to answer that question. So that was probably super long, not super helpful, but we want to get you the information that'll help you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we will have the Wildland Urban Interface, Deputy Fire Marshal Jeanie Atherton.
Hello, I'm excited to be here tonight and talk to you about our defensible space and our Wildland Urban Interface program. This is a program that we've had for about 3 years now in Provo. So we're going to kind of talk about what it is and how your community can benefit from this. There we go. So we're talking about what is the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI? It's kind of a term that gets thrown around a lot. You may have heard it, you may have not. And then what is defensible space and why you need defensible space around your home. So the short version of this long description here about the Wildland Urban Interface is that is when you have undeveloped land next to developed land. So if you look all across the east bench of Provo, you have the foothills with homes above these huge slopes that have grass and scrub oak and lots of vegetation on them. We also have areas all around Provo that are like that. If you look at Grandview Hill, that area is like that as well. So we have pockets of this kind of spread out all through Provo. And these are areas where wildfires can start and easily move into neighborhoods. And so our program is built to educate homeowners on how to create defensible space around their homes so that we can create a safer environment for all of the residents of Provo. These are just various areas around, some examples of some of the areas in Provo that we have that are like this. There we go. So basically, this is an example of a home up in Northeast Provo. And this one right here, this is a home, this home on the left is before mitigation work. This home on the right is after mitigation work, where they had gone in and removed a bunch of scrub oak. And this is exactly the type of stuff we want. This happens to be the draw that's back behind Timpview High School. So that's an area where fire travels uphill pretty fast. So a fire that's going up this draw towards these homes would slow down and stop here and allow us to get in and give us time to kind of set up defensive fire operations. Whereas if you have all this behind your house, then it's not going, it's going to the fire, it's just going to keep traveling up towards where this home is. So when in creating defensible space, we look at a homeowner's property, and one thing I will say at the very end, there's a QR code that you can scan for a free home assessment. So this program is no cost to the residents. We will come to a free home assessment. We will tell you what you need to do around your home to make it more safe and to create defensible space. And then when you remove materials from your yard, we will come and take those materials away from your house and ship them and take them to the dump. So really what we're trying to do is get this area around the house clear of debris, wood piles. We want to make sure that there's no leaves and pine needles that are in the gutters around the house. We want to make sure that you're not storing flammable anything within 5 feet of the house. We call it the fire-free 5. So we want everything within the first 5 feet of the house to be completely non-flammable. And then we look at the other 70 feet around your house and look and see what kind of trees do you have. You have really tall pine trees that are overhanging your roof, and things like that, or any vegetation that's touching your home. Those are things that we want to address. You don't necessarily have to get rid of everything, but we will tell you how to limb up and thin out different vegetation around your home to make it safer. So I'm going to show you this video.
Let's say a wildfire is burning in
Why
a
we need
nearby
it.
forest or shrub steppe and is now racing towards your community. You might be thinking that as long as your house is not on the edge of town, you don't have to worry about it. The reality is, doing this in this community. First, it's not the plan for wildfire. Second, you need more fuel for fire. Houses do. So even if your neighbors have done everything they can to prepare what you do or don't do around
Okay, so that's a perfect example of how these fires get into neighborhoods and how they can potentially destroy more than one home at a time. So these big fires in California that have been catastrophic, the Paradise Fire, the Camp Fire, where they got into these neighborhoods and destroyed these neighborhoods very quickly, is because these embers can travel up to 5 miles. So if it's windy enough, they can blow embers into neighborhoods that are remote from where the actual fire is. And once you get one home going, it can get 2 homes going, then you have 4 homes, and it just kind of escalates from there. So one thing we're really trying to push is to get all the residents all throughout Provo City to do this kind of work. Because people that live in downtown Provo, if they don't have defensible space around their house, they could have embers land in their property and their house could ignite, even though they're not anywhere near the wildland urban interface. Okay, so this picture depicts kind of, so we have a seasonal fuels mitigation crew of 6 people. And we do all sorts of mitigation on city property and create kind of increased natural fire breaks, just so we can keep fires that start in Provo from expanding up the mountain and growing to catastrophic levels where we have to call in air resources. Oh, you're fine. So this area right here, and I actually have a better photo from some work we did this year, but we call this the $1 million stop because this trail right here, this is the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. This is just south of Rock Canyon looking north. We had a fire here 2 years ago that started when we believe there was a surge in these high power lines that kind of sparked and dropped down into this grass right here on a resident's property. But what we had done is during the summer, and we do this every year, we just have finished this project right before the 4th of July, is we go and string trim with string trimmers the Bonneville Shoreline Trail from Rock Canyon down to Slate Canyon, and then from Slate Canyon down to the Springville Provo border. So you can see this grass up here is really tall, so we do about 10 feet on either side where we can get to it if there's not a fence. But this short grass, once the fire got to this point, it really slowed down, and it actually bought our crew time to get in there and get above this fire and keep it from running that mountain. And the reason it's called the $1 million stop is once we're calling in state resources, we're calling in aircraft and other things to come mitigate this fire, it really escalates the cost of putting that fire out. And we have agreements with the state to do this if we need to, but our fire department's philosophy is we want to get there and mitigate this problem before it gets to that point. So if you are interested in a free home assessment, scan this QR code. It will take you to a Google form, and it will just fill it out, and it'll ask you for your address, phone number, and I'm happy to come and do that. I can schedule those at your convenience, whether it's during the daytime, evening, we'll just make it work for your schedule. So I'll let everyone scan this, and then I will show the next slide has my contact information. So if you're interested, if you want more information about our program and what we do, we have a community curbside chipping program. So if you have extra wood, stuff like that, like scrub oak, stuff that you want to remove from your yard, if you're wanting to increase your defensible space, we will come through, and once you have that stuff out to the curb, we will come through and ship it. That program goes through August 15th. So we're only about 2 weeks out from being done for the season. And we're actually wrapping everything up probably by the end of next week. But moving forward into next season, this is stuff I like to promote year to year because the fall and especially the springtime is a great time to start this work for next year. So this is my contact information. And if you have any questions, feel free to call or email me. Any questions? Yes.
So, you spoke of, helping residences, homeowners
Yes.
to take care of things. What about companies that own property that would then put into the Provo city boundary? And even though I have contacted them and said, you know what, this is a bad fire waiting to happen at the end of our street. And I got no response. And so it's really been bugging me.
Yeah.
I walked down there and cleared the sidewalk of the thistles and the dry. And there's junk trees that are there as well. There's also wood piles. And this is on State Street south of Lakeview Parkway.
Okay.
And at the end of Mountain Vista Lane.
Okay.
I know that it's a fire waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to go, what to do.
So I've had discussions with the fire marshal about that because we have quite a few properties throughout Provo that are owned by LLCs and other people that live in other states. that don't want to seem, you can file something with code enforcement and then they try to talk to the property owner to get them to do work. And we're trying to come up with a way to deal with that. So that's something that we are on, that's on our radar. The problem is the fire department can't initiate that process. It has to come from another resident. So if there is going to be a complaint with code enforcement for the weeds and the need for mitigation, that has to come from another resident. We can't go in and do it, but it's something that we're trying to figure out how we're gonna manage that, because we have that all over Provo, and it is an issue that we need to find a solution to. So I don't have an answer for that right now, but it's something that we're working on, so.
Well, it's McWayne Ductile. They're the owners of those 2 empty lots that are just overgrown, and I'm not sure who the owner is for that property between 2000 South. and
Okay,
Foothills.
yeah, I'm familiar with that area, so.
Yeah,
That's something I will ask my boss about and see what, if there is something, since we do know who that property owner is, if there's something we could do.
you know, one other thing too, I think we all need to be aware that home insurance. Our home insurance was canceled because we live in an area that could spark like that.
Yeah, who was your homeowner's insurance?
Oh, you asked me hard questions.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just curious because I've had other residents ask me about this. There's something that that is becoming, it's happened in other states, particularly California, and it's now transferring here. So that's something that you know, the residents and our office is going to have to deal with. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out over the next few years. I know I saw a news story several weeks ago that the state legislature is getting involved, and I don't know what that means and how and what they're going to do about it, but that's something that our office will track and try to get as much information about that as we can, so. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, now we're gonna hear about our planning item, and Rachel Green's gonna introduce it. And the
Actually,
person.
our applicant is stuck in traffic, so can we go to the Provo School District? Skip over.
Yeah.
He's trying, he's on Zoom watching this while he's stuck in traffic, so
Okay.
we will go to.
I'm Jennifer Partridge, and I am the school board member that lives in the area and represents a lot of you. Meg Van Wagenen also represents some of you in this area, more in the Wasatch area. I do Provost Spring Creek area. I'm happy to be here tonight to share some information with you. If we have time for questions, that will be great. If not, I'm happy to talk with you afterwards, or you're always welcome to call me, email me. All right, so I just first want to start with a few things that happened this last school year that just ended. So we just finished our first year with our new superintendent, Wendy Dow, and it's been a great year. It's been a focus on increased communication with our community members, as well as and our parents and families, as well as within our district, supporting our teachers and clarifying communication channels that we have there, which helps support them in their roles. We've also adjusted the structure of the district and removed some district positions and used that money to send more people out into our schools and getting more support in our schools. So now all of our elementary schools will have an assistant principal. Not all of them had that before. And that's really important because especially now with a lot of, we've seen an increase the last few years, and this is not just in Provo, this is statewide and nationwide, increased behavior challenges and things like that. There are certain things that only an administrator can take care of in a building. And so when it was just the principal, they were having to spend the majority of their time doing those things and less time in classrooms and supporting the teacher in the instruction, which our most important goal is to help our students learn effectively. And so we want them to have more time to be able to do that. So that's a really good thing. Our main academic wing at 10U is completed earlier this year. exciting, but it's not done yet. So we're still in construction right now with Timpview. And I'm gonna talk in a little bit about, a proposal to continue construction even when this current phase is done. For the upcoming school year, I wanted to let you know that school starts Tuesday, August 13th, so we're now less than 2 weeks away from that, much to the chagrin of my children. But I wanted to raise awareness, for all of our neighbors, whether you have kids in school or not, just if you can help raise awareness, that we want to make sure as our kids start walking to school, walking to and from, that we as residents are doing our best to keep them safe, that we drive slowly in our neighborhoods, we look for the students, support them in, we hope a lot of them will bike and scooter and walk and get that good physical activity as well. So help us to make that a safe place for them. We also approved with our new budget that's starting this year, an increase in teacher pay. And we specifically focused a lot of attention on our middle years of pay. We're pretty competitive with other districts for our starting salaries. At this point, we're really close, but it was those years like around 8, 10, 12, where the other districts were pulling ahead of us. And so we have good teachers here and they'd see that they could make more in Alpine or Nebo and they'd leave. And so we wanted to close that gap. And so we were able to make some good strides on that this year. And then our new Shoreline Middle School, which is replacing Dixon Middle School, is opening. We just had an open house this week, and if you're curious, there's a little video on our district social media about that. That beautiful new building that the students and teachers will start the new year in. Our Wasatch Elementary construction is ongoing, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. We've been working all this year on creating a strategic plan, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we should finalize that soon. And cell phone policy, I'm going to talk about as well, that we are going to implement in a few months. And then we are just starting the process to begin a boundary and feasibility study. It's been over 20 years since our district has done that. And we just want to make sure that we have our resources allocated well. Some of our schools have a really large population, specifically elementary, and others not so much. But we also know we're anticipating growth in certain areas. So we just want to make sure that we're aligning the best we can to meet our needs and allocate our resources effectively. So our strategic plan, this is our draft so far, and in our August 13th meeting, we should be talking more about finalization. But you can see our main priorities are academic achievement, wellness and safety, and stewardship of resources, and we're setting goals, specific measurable goals in all of those categories. You can see our mission, values, and vision statements here. We want to welcome, educate, and inspire. All right, so Wasatch Elementary, our plan is to move the students into the building in January. The one hiccup is some electrical stuff has been back ordered since the spring. We are hoping it's here by September, and if it is, we'll be on target. And ideally, we could even move them in over Christmas break. If it's not here on time, then we're not quite sure if they'll be able to make the deadline over Christmas or beginning of January. We do have to be out of the building by the end of January, though. That's our agreement with BYU to be out of the current Wasatch by then. So we're going to work really hard on that. And if you would like updates on our construction, which includes Wasatch, Timpview, you can go to our website, provo.edu, and find it there, or /business-finance/construction, and they'll send you weekly emails from our board meetings so we get our update of that. Here's kind of a layout of that. And we continue to work on the safe routes plans for the new school as well. All right, let's talk about Timpview. The current phase of Timpview, they are finishing up a gym and locker area and softball fields, and then, or field, and then that is what had been planned. That's what the bond that happened a few years ago paid for. And at the time of that bond, We knew we need to take care of the most important things structurally. And so we only bonded for that. And we thought we might have 5 to 10 years on the rest of the building, which includes our arts wing, our administrative wing, and our industrial arts wing and the cafeteria. And as they've been doing the current construction, they've been finding unreinforced masonry. So the building wasn't built well, and it's in the walls that we're planning to stay, that they have to kind of cut open to get into the new section. They've been finding gaps in the patio right outside the cafeteria, that the cement's here and the dirt's way down, 4 or 5 feet below. And so they're realizing there's more structural issues than we first realized, and so we need to move sooner on that. So here is a suggested plan of how the architects would handle doing things. My slide had circled option 2. The thought now is that we would go with option 2, which is a little bit later completion date, but it minimizes the disruption to the students. It allows us to stay in the auditorium and the arts wing currently, instead of having the arts, like, it's hard to have a band class and portables and stuff. And so it would move the auditorium down by the gym, and by 2029, we would be done with the school. The cafeteria would stay, and in fact, we're gonna start moving forward on that project because we have enough reserves to get started on that. While in the meantime, we're having these community conversations. And if we do move forward, we would need to bond, and we would come to the public, and it would be a year from now. So not this November, but it would be next November that you would vote on that. And we have until about March to finalize what that would look like. But we're looking at about $50 million or so for the project. Also on our facilities needs is our students just left Dixon, originally built in 1931. And we built a new school because of the safety issues here and the needs. But we are keeping the site, and we have a lot of other district programs and needs that could be met there. And so we're still trying to figure out what would be the best use of that space, but whatever it is, we would need to build a new building. So the cost of that depends on what we decide to do there. So we're still taking input and looking at that. But we might ask for that at the same time that we ask for TIPU in the year. This year, we're really focused on cell phone policy. And we just want our kids to be able to focus on academic achievement and learning. And we all know we do it ourselves, right? Like when we're checking our phones, while we're also trying to do other things, we miss some of those other things. And we have a lot of, in our high schools, particularly distracted students who lost ability to focus. Our middle schools already have a policy where they are not allowed to have their phone out at all during the school day once the first bell rings, so the last bell, and our elementaries as well. So we're mostly looking, we've had really soft policies at our high schools, and so we want to firm up what that policy is. It's in a draft form right now. We're going to send out a survey to parents and students and teachers that should close about mid-September. And then we're gonna work on the policies more, and then we should finalize it by November. If we're not quite ready yet, we'll finalize it by December, and then implement it when the new semester starts at the beginning of January. So the direction we're leaning right now is that students in high schools would not be allowed to have their phones out at all during classroom time. But during passing periods, during lunch, they would be able to have their phones out. And then here's just some contact information. We've got a lot of good updates on our district websites and social media. And as well, here's my personal information. My email is jenniferpa@provo.edu. And I forgot to put my phone number up there, but I'm happy to give it out. So if you'd like to contact me through text or phone, I can give that to you, and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And we have, most of our other board members also are on social media, so if you like to follow people along on there, you can look for them and find them. So how much time do we have? We're good?
Yeah, just about that.
Okay, well, that was all I have. So, okay, if you guys have any questions after, I will be here. So thank you.
Okay, I just want to introduce our planning item. Just real quick, just a reminder that developers are not required to attend neighborhood meetings. So we're very thankful when they do come to speak to the residents. And kind of some questions to consider are: what are the benefits to the neighborhood and city? What are the potential downsides and impacts? And why is this zone change better than what currently exists? A question we get all the time is, can neighborhoods request a development agreement? And the answer is no. The city also cannot ask for a development agreement, but you can ask, how will you guarantee that you will address my concerns? And see if the developer proffers one. If you still have questions after his presentation and after our discussion, the slides will be online, and on the agenda is the city planner's name, email, and phone number. And please feel free to contact the city planner if you have any questions on this. To see where we're at in the development process, the applicant has his idea, he's submitted his application, and right now he's in the review process, which means that what he's showing you tonight might be different than what he showed that planning commission, because it's kind of in a back and forth, where right now the city is asking him to make some revisions. So just keep that in mind. So after all the reviews are done, he will go before the planning commission. They will give a recommendation, and then the city council will make the final decision. So if you love the project, if you have concerns about the project, we do encourage you to attend planning commission and city council, because that's where they have public comment on those. And now we'll turn the time over.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the accommodation. Really nasty accident on Center Street exit, and appreciate everyone's patience. But we're excited to be in Provo today, and we appreciate staff and their help, and Rachel and Dustin, everybody, and helping prepare this item for this neighborhood meeting tonight. My name is Chase Freebairn. I represent Home by CW Urban. We're a Utah-based home builder developer, and we've been working with the land seller now for some time to try to come to terms with a proposal that you know, can help accomplish the goals of the neighborhood. And obviously we have you know, part of our business is to build, develop, and sell homes. And but at the same time, we want to make sure it's something that meets the needs of the community we're building in. We realize that we're one of many stakeholders. And if we do end up purchasing the property, obviously we would become a property owner. We would become not permanently part of your neighborhood, but we would become you know, co-creators and collaborators in the development process. And we want to be good neighbors. We want to look back at projects we've built previously and be proud of what we've proposed and built, and we want to try to add value to your neighborhood and not take anything away from it. And we know sometimes change can be challenging. This is the general site. So the rough address here, 1122 South, 900 East. It's about 1.6 acres. Right now, I believe it's being used as a storage facility for trucks and maintenance, warehousing of the trucks for the business that operates there. I believe it's Rubicon is the name. You see a lot of those trucks there that are parked there. And they've been using that now for some time. And so we would plan to redevelop the site. You can see there's townhome projects to the north, northeast and east. And there's the mobile homes to the south. And, this is kind of the current zoning map. So we're obviously the red star, currently within the M1, which is the light manufacturing zone, which allows the current user to do what they do. Obviously, you've got the LDR zone, low density residential, RC conservation zone, and then mobile home residential to the south. And then of course, to the west, the train yards, M2. So this is the general plan map. It's pretty straightforward, calls for residential in this area. That's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, you get to the train tracks and it becomes industrial. This is the Provo City Southeast Neighborhood Future Land Use Map. And the proposed zone that we're seeking rezone approval of is the LDR zone. And this zone is consistent with the Southeast Provo City general plan map. We don't feel like we're proposing anything that's too far out of the ordinary of what's around us. And so we're trying to bring, you're trying to conform to the general plan, and anytime you're developing property, in your, whether you're building a new house or opening a new business, making sure that you're consistent with the general plan and the zoning map, and making sure that your use is appropriate for the neighborhood. This is our proposed concept plan. Again, as I didn't catch it, sorry, but Rachel, that's right. So as Rachel mentioned, this is very preliminary in the process. This concept will most likely change. There will most likely be some tweaks, revisions along the way, and that's normal. That's part of the development process. Part of that is, coming to this meeting, engaging with neighbors, talking with other stakeholders and city staff, and planning commission, city council. So it definitely is a process. We're proposing 31 for-sale townhomes. Again, these are for sale. We would build these and develop, and the current plan is to develop the site, build the townhomes, and then sell them individually to homeowners or prospective homeowners as a for sale product. And so we don't have any intent of keeping these as a long-term rental or duplex type thing. That's not our intent. We are a home builder, and we are on the for sale division. We do have a division of our company that focuses on apartments and multifamily and for rent. That is not us. This is intended to be a for sale site. So for those that are curious about, am I going to have, constant turnover with neighbors and renting, and I get that. If I were in your shoes, I understand. May not be your first choice for land use in this area. But giving someone a nice, spacious, brand new townhome that's modern, that's attractive, helping people who are starting out in life, get on the housing ladder. Maybe this is their first home purchase, or maybe someone's downsizing from a larger home they can't maintain anymore. We want this to be a nice, modern, attractive site that's for sale with some amenities. So we propose parking, and we have a proposed landscape plan. We haven't far into the amenities yet. It's still fairly early. But essentially, these are the renderings. And now this is a 7-plex, so it's not quite exactly, most of these are 5 or 6 plexes that you see. This is actually rendered as a okay. This is rendered as a 7-plex, but again, this is the exact product minus the additional length in units. It's a product we've designed in-house. Our own architecture group, and again, the product we build is important. We want it to be attractive. We also want it to be something that someone can be proud of and call home. And I know a lot of you may have questions specifically about traffic. We did engage Not a full-blown traffic impact study. That will most likely come later in the process. But for now, we engaged a traffic engineer, Hales Engineering, one of the more prominent traffic engineers in the state. And you know, they took a look at our parking, they took a look at our proposed use and impact to the neighborhood and traffic, and that's always top of mind. I have 2 children myself, and I like to play with my kids outside my house, and I hear you. Nobody wants an accident with children or a log jam with traffic. We understand that. So we take it very seriously. Traffic is very important. Safety is very important. This is their initial traffic generation study. So they're basically, and I'm not going to cover the entire report. This is just their last conclusion. Basically that if these are for sale townhomes, if these are families that are living and working nearby and living in this area, in this project, you know, these are the potential consequences and impacts of that. And, you know, assuming, like I think it mentions in the report, you know, people don't throw a bunch of junk in their garage and their garage becomes a storage unit, and then you're not parking 2 cars in the garage, and then you're parking 2 cars in the driveway, and your parking capacity shrinks, and then, you know, so we don't want that. We want to make sure that, you know, homeowners per the CCNRs, you can't just park an RV, or you can't just leave your car permanently in your driveway. There will be CCNRs and HOA to help maintain landscaping and enforce, you know, anyone that doesn't comply with, you know, the rules, regulations of the HOA. We want to make sure that, you know, there's enough adequate parking for an event. If someone holds a Super Bowl party or has a family party, that there's enough to go around. So it's not a final assumption. I mean, there's still things that could be tweaked, and you know, this could change. If we change our plan, we would have to go back to the traffic engineer and update the traffic report. And again, this is a preliminary study. So yeah, I mean, I think, I think, and so Rachel's question, I think, you know, how will we as a developer ensure that what we build lasts and the intended use stays the intended use? It's a good question. I think, you know, starting off by selling those units is
please mute up.
It's certainly our intent. There's always the possibility someone could buy the unit and, you know, they choose to rent the property out later at, you know, in their timeline as a homeowner. That's something we specifically can't control. There are some mechanisms, however, like if we wanted to do some type of deed restriction for a certain number of years, or if a homeowner, you say, hey, homeowner, you can live here, but to make sure that you're not going to turn this into a rental duplex or complex, you know, you have to be a primary resident, or you have to own the property and live here as a primary resident for a certain number of years before you can, you know, sell off or rent the property to another user. So there are mechanisms to do that. And we're open to discussing those options with the neighbors and the city staff, but we appreciate your time and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Do we want to open it up for any questions?
I have a question. It's probably not the most important question you're gonna answer, but about aesthetics. So I'm looking at your plan and you've got these black and white houses. And I don't know, maybe this is just me, but this kind of reminds me of, you know, A Wrinkle in Time, like all the houses are cookie cutter and stuff. Can we do a different color? Can we do something more, you know, like neutral, like, you know, earth tones or something that fits in more with, you know, the aesthetic of the mountains and stuff? Again, I know it's not the most important question you're gonna answer today, but I'm kind of tired of all the black and white houses in Provo. I mean, Provo is beautiful and black and white is just not a good vibe. It just makes us look too industrial. And we're already in an industrial part of the city, and I would just like something a little bit nicer. But I do have an important question.
Sure.
My important question is about affordability. You know, so it's been something we've been talking about a lot in the state about housing affordability. What are you assuming that these houses are gonna sell for?
It's a great question. It's an answer. It's not definitive at this point. We have a projection, obviously, or we wouldn't probably be here if we didn't think we could sell it for a certain price. And you know, obviously, it has to work for everybody. We have to have a product that's priced enough that, you know, as a business, that, you know, we have a profit motive. There's no secret in that. But we have to make sure we don't get stuck with land and units we can't sell, and we also want to make sure it's attainable for the public at large. You know, we're home buyers as well, and I still live in my starter home that I thought I would only be in 2 years, and sometimes it's interest rate dependent, affordability, and that's a challenge right now. You know, it's hard to say exactly. I think, you know, if we could choose, certainly in the mid to high 400s would be a reasonable target. It's possible that changes, you know, we get our hard costs back, our cost to develop and engineer and produce this product, that maybe it's the lower 400s, maybe it's over 500 in the low 500s. I don't know. I think it's roughly in that range. And certainly as we go, we can dial that in. But to answer your other question, sorry if you don't mind, I don't disagree with you. In fact, Rachel's pulling up some other, these are just renderings. So the final paint and product and the design swatch palette, that can all be changed. And I don't disagree. I think there's way too many ultra white. My parents live in neighborhoods where a cul-de-sac is completely white homes. And I don't know if they didn't realize that, but it's something we see as neighbors, as citizens driving by. You can tell which homes were built in 06 and 2012 and so on. So hopefully that answers part of your question. Yeah, the question.
What's the square footage of these units?
Yes, so, and I don't know if that's later in the.
And then my next question would be, how many feet before the railroad? How close are they to the railroad?
That's a good question. Yeah, so going to the square footage question first. I think it's on. So the medium units, so there's 10 medium units, and then there's 21 large units. The medium units, these are all 3-story townhomes, slab on grade, no basement. They're all 3-bedroom minimum. They're actually all 3-bedroom, period. They're all 2-car garage, period. The medium unit is 1620 finished square feet, roughly. And again, it could change if there's tweaks to the plans, or so the square footage amount you see today, the end result should be very similar. But 1620, that's the medium units. And if you go to the large units, again, 3-bedroom, 2-car garage, that's 1822 total square feet for the large units. And I think we have a few diagrams. I don't know, it's the next page. Okay, so here's the medium unit, 2-car garage. To be clear, that is not a legal bedroom. That's actually, well, I think it can be, but it's really on our plans listed as flex space. So it could be an office, it could be an exercise room, it could be a study room for kids to do homework. But this is the main level, and then you go upstairs to the second level, and then you have your living area, your kitchen, dining. This is where, you know, most of the household lives, and then obviously the 3rd floor, the 3 bedrooms are upstairs, master, and then 2 bedrooms, and you've got the bathrooms there. So that's the medium plan. If you go to the next layout, similar concept. You've got a flex room on the main floor with the garage. It can be a bedroom. We're not calling it a bedroom in this instance, but bathroom finished. And I think that might even be, you could do like a dog wash, or, you know, you could really change the space depending on how you live. And then upstairs, again, living, dining, kitchen, same concept as the other plan, just larger square footage. And then upstairs, the last unit or the last floor, again, 3 bedrooms on the top floor. So that's kind of the general plan layout for the units.
And now, how
I
far?
noticed on the parking, it says the anticipated parking is either 70 or 110 parking stalls. What?
Yeah, and part of the report was they didn't know how quite Provo City would define family occupancy and how ultimately the garages would be used. And so I think as a traffic engineer, before they put a stamp on their report, they're prefacing and saying, look, assuming if it's this, you know, this is where we would land. I don't think they know the answer to that question yet. And this was a report where, again, this is not a full traffic study. This is a trip generation study and kind of a rough parking analysis. So it does depend on what is considered family occupancy and what is considered the parking situation based on garages. I'll come back to you, sorry. Go ahead, ma'am, sorry. I think, go ahead, yes.
Okay, second question. How close are these to the railroad? What?
Oh, I
Give me
apologize.
feet. Give me feet,
Yeah,
please.
in feet. The site plan may not call it out specifically. The project itself, I mean, there is a landscape buffer that's up against the railroad. And then the road, I think at the closest point the road gets to it, you know, I'm just. I'd have to come back with an exact measurement for you, but I'm guessing about roughly probably 5 feet landscape buffer. Then the road, a 26-foot wide road, and then you would get to the island where the units are. And so I think these units, again, I'm guessing without an exact measurement, but I'm probably thinking 35, 40 feet from property line of the railroads to the first unit.
My concern there is the buffer space. You may want to consider a bit more. I happen to live on Mountain Vista Lane, and we have the railroad too, but we are much further away. And all of the lots are larger, so it gives us more space. And then there's a business, Tracy Hall Parkway is there too. So that's a significant amount of space. My only concern seriously would be for you guys as the developers, because when you're that close, it might be a caveat.
And certainly,
Yeah, that's.
sorry, gentleman back, you had another follow-up question.
Well, it was just on the parking space, parking stalls. Does that include the garage space?
Yeah, they're basically saying there's two options, and assuming people are using a garage normally, then this parking plan as shown is sufficient.
And those parking stalls are including the garage.
Yeah, so they're including, like the driveways aren't big enough for vehicles themselves, but it's assuming 2 vehicles per unit plus the overflow stalls of 12 additional stalls, so, you know,
Right,
yeah.
that would equal that. So,
sorry, I think you've been holding it, sorry, I'll come back to everybody.
First of all, I'm really glad to see that they all have their own garages. I think that's really important. I don't think only 12 extra parking stalls is gonna be enough. We've had a lot of developments in this area that have very limited extra parking, and we always have way too many people parking on the street, which makes it hard for safety for our children especially. So I would like to see more extra stalls, but the garages on the back, I just recommend a lot of people come in their cars, and it looks like the beauties on the inside courtyards that aren't very, like a lot of guests aren't gonna see that as much. I don't know. I think I would like to see, instead of just a straight line with the garage there, a little more architectural aesthetic cause that is where a lot of people come in and see your product first, right? And
Yeah,
it's not very pretty on the garage side, right?
Sure, and there's things we can do to liven that up, and you're right, it's like from a pedestrian standpoint, the front of the units, you walk into the sidewalks, the units face each other, there's a paseo or just kind of a breezeway, walkway. But when you're coming home from work, that's not what you're gonna see, you're gonna pull in and see the back of the unit. And yeah, I don't disagree, I think it's something that worth considering. Mary, you had a question?
I think this is great entry level development. That's exciting. We need that. We need like the first time home buyer option here. It is near the railway, which is annoying. But I also think when we look at housing, that's gonna affect your housing. You got cheaper land here because it's near the railway, which is gonna equate to cheaper houses for the public to buy. And generally, you're not buying your most everything ideal when you buy your first home, right? So there's pluses and minuses to that. And they're gonna get a brand new house, but it might be the track, I think it works out and it makes it worth it in the long run. People, they'll know what they're buying next to. And I like how you've done it where you've maximized the distance from the railroad as much as you could. I think what's gonna make or break this development is the homeowner occupancy. So suppose, especially with parking, like this gentleman mentioned, parking, the parking will become a huge issue if they're rented out to students and you have 3 to 6 students living in them. Or that, so I think it would be, you mentioned an HOA, which helps manage these things, and doing the homeowner occupancy at least for the first year would be amazing. And I've even heard of some developments where they do it with every sale, right? So even when you sell it again, it has to be owner occupied for a year, which helps do it in perpetuity. So it's not just a short-term awesome development, but it stays awesome in the long run. I think the spacing, I just think it's great, first time homeowner real estate, and we really, really need that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like them as well. Just a comment, we once evaluated all of the condo and townhome areas like this in Southeast Provo. And it is unique. I know that a lot of townhomes will get bought up by investors. I think in Southeast Provo, it's even more so. Nuances of a lot of LDS singles wards in the neighborhood and different things like that track a high level. When a townhome area like this was built up at Slate Canyon, just kind of up the hill, I remember I went up and we tracked all of the ownership and I talked to the sales rep. 64% were sold to investors right out the door. When we looked at the ownership for just across the street, we were in the 80s and 90% investors. So I say that just to say it's really high. When we had the Southeast Area Master Plan, we knew that this is huge target zone for investors. And so we went through all these different ideas. We talked about what Catrice said, putting in the HOA things, but know that we have done that in other areas of this area. And it's difficult to enforce that when the HOA board is quickly voted, the people who are on it are all investors. So while those things were good, one of the things that we discussed in the plan was not necessarily to increase parking. It was that whenever a new development came in, we encouraged it as much as we could. We were really flexible with the zoning so that people could get it, but we red striped all of the streets around it. So that when you went to go buy that property, you knew that there was really no option for you to go anywhere else. And there wasn't even a lot of extra parking. And while that might seem inconvenient, that was just one of our ideas at the time.
No, it's a great comment. I mean, there's no question that our intent is for these to be owner occupied primary residence. There's always the chance, I think it's a small chance, but there's always the chance that we don't stay the builder, or we develop and entitle the site with the city, and our owner business, director decides, hey, let's actually sell this to builder XYZ. And so what's the mechanism that ties the intended use, regardless of the developer, regardless of the builder? And there are ways you can do that. You can, like I said, deed restrict. You can CC&Rs, development agreement, covenants you record against the property that run with the land, regardless of who the owner is, to provide some additional layers of protection. But I think it's some great comments. I mean, certainly, I'm no traffic engineer, and nor am I a civil engineer, but I think parking is always a concern. It's always top of mind in a project like this, as is traffic. And we don't want spillover parking where there's parking in front of people's garages. They can't get out. They're late for work because somebody parked their truck too close to the, there's all sorts of different circumstances, and we don't want spillover traffic to flood 900 East. So there's a lot of things to consider for sure.
Just one last question. I'm really trying to wrap my brain around this exact location. You indicated that there were trucks there, stored there. Are those trucks Rubicon?
I believe so, yes.
Ah,
Yes.
Okay, I know right where you're at.
Where will all the trucks go?
I don't know the current property owner, that's part of their business. I don't know what their end goal is for those vehicles. I have no idea.
There's a lot of cars parked.
Yeah, it's a giant parking lot for that business for sure. There was a comment, I think, ma'am, in the very back. I think you had a hand, you still had a question, ma'am, in the very back. Oh, you were trying, okay. Yes.
One more question. Because it's so close to the railroad and because of the way you're designing these homes, it seems like they're gonna be for families probably with young children. You said you have a landscaping barrier. Are you gonna have any fencing up near by the, as a, a more permanent barrier so that kids aren't, running onto rails tracks?
Sure, no, I think right now it's just an old chain link fence and for sure we would put up new development fencing, kind of a community fence around the border of the project. What that looks like, I don't know today. It's still going to evolve as we go through the process with landscape design. We're always cognizant of cost. But we also want to make sure it's attractive fence, it looks good. We don't want a very old chain link or chain link fence. Sorry, I don't know who was first. Go ahead.
Just a comment about the fence. I live in the development that's just north. And we regularly have people that are breaking down those fences. So just making sure that it's a fence that would last a lot longer than vinyl.
Sure.
And just so you're aware, there is loud train horns they change the way the trains are being run this year. There's a lot more train noise throughout the night now. So since you live here, you're kind of aware of that, it's become a significant public issue. And as you might know, trains have the oldest property rights in the country, so there's nothing we can do about it as a city. We've been working on that. So just FYI.
No, yeah, it's always, I mean, I lived with my sister, sorry, I don't want to get too personal. My sister lived in the Bay Area, her and her husband, their first condo, right up against the Caltrain railroad tracks. And we spent a night there visiting, his family and it definitely several times throughout the night, you knew there was a train coming for sure. So it's something
You get used to it living there, but probably give people a heads up or something.
Yeah,
It's nice.
So I understand one of the great concerns. So my thought is this. Do a little bit of study, get a sound engineer involved, find out what you can build for that fence that will bank the noise and send it back. Do you understand what I mean? So vinyl isn't gonna do it. Something more sturdy, bricks, something like that would likely be a good way to bank that noise from the railroad since it is so close.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to look into it. I don't know what type of fencing has been done previously in other developments or what the city requires, but I mean, certainly, I don't know that anything's really going to change the fact that the train tracks are there and that you're nothing's gonna take that away. But I don't disagree. I mean, if there's a way we can soften it up, and a lot of times you add trees, you add, different types of fencing that can better absorb that sound, then maybe just.
There is a code on the books which requires for development to put in a 6-foot tall concrete wall. I don't know if it's still on the books. I may have missed a few things here and there.
Yeah, no, so.
We need to wrap it up.
Okay, sure. Okay, no, these are great questions, and again, all of these questions may not be answered tonight. We don't have all the solutions to all these questions, but we do take these comments seriously, and some of the best ideas and concepts and feedback comes from neighbors. We don't know everything. The city doesn't know everything. Sometimes the neighbors, the people who live here know best. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hey, just a reminder that this item will be going to planning commission and city council. If you live really close by, you'll receive a postcard about those meetings. Otherwise, look for notices on the city website or social media. And if you're not able to attend the public hearings, you can always write to the planning commission at dspublichearings@provo.org and the city council at council@provo.org. Okay, well, we're gonna skip through that. And, I wanted to talk about, I guess the next item, is it okay if I go to the next item? The next item is safe routes to school. This is concerning Wasatch Elementary. I reached out to Public Works, and they have been coordinating with Wasatch Elementary School. Most of this construction is going to start in August. And there's kind of more information on this slide, but then it's kind of hard to figure out where it's at. So I made a little slide kind of showing what they're doing. So crosswalk and barrier at Oak Cliff Drive and Oakmont Lane, sidewalk along 1450 East to Oak Cliff Drive to Oakmont Lane, sidewalk on Locust Lane, this little part right here between Wasatch and 1099 North. And then there's gonna be 2 crosswalks on 1450 East. Those locations are to be determined. We're not sure exactly where those are gonna be yet. There's gonna be a reduced speed zone along 820 North, and they said that's gonna be 200 feet in either direction here. Reduced speed zone and also school crosswalks right around here. School crosswalks on Locust Lane and Apple Avenue. And then they talked to the developer of this Keystone, and they're going to do the sidewalk on the south side of 820 North. So look for these improvements in August. And then our next item that we asked Public Works, at our last meeting, someone had wanted a report about the water at Rock Canyon Park. And so they're asking, where's the water that used to run down? And so pretty much what they're saying is there's not permanent water that flows down all the time. It's an ephemeral water body. And so it's related to the snowpack and runoff. And so the water the last few years have been able to run all the way down Rock Canyon. But when there's a drought, there's water will not make it all the way down to the park. They had also asked if the water is going into the aquifer, and the answer is yes. And so the extra water coming down flows into Rock Canyon Park, and so the extra water flows down, and during dry years, the ground is really thirsty, so the ground soaks up the water and often doesn't make it to the park. And then they wanted to know the process. And so the new pipeline in the area will allow for water to discharge into the creek. When there's no longer water running down, the plan is to recharge the aquifer throughout the whole year to help restore the lowering levels. And studies show that Rock Canyon is a prime location for aquifer recharge. And then they're wondering about how this does affect the natural biology of the area. And the creek provides temporary water for animals and plants, but it's not a year-round source of water. So animals and plants in this area are hardy, and they have ways to find water when the creek dries up. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Yes.
So there's a pipeline that's discharging water into the creek. Where is that water coming from?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that water is coming from. I'm assuming it's coming from the mountains. So, but I'm not sure. This is just a report I got from Public Works, so I'm not sure. But I will ask that. Where is the water from the pipeline? Okay. And this is Public Works is really busy time of year, so they could just give me reports. They weren't able to come to our meeting. Oh, and then we wanted a report on the abandoned apartment complex at 910 North, 900 East. They call it the NB Park Plaza Apartment. So here is the statement from Yater, Zelaya. He is your code enforcement officer for District 2. And he said that you guys didn't have his direct phone number. So if you want to,
More information than that.
I do have more information than that. The problem is, it's in court, so they can't give out information. So
Have they filed an actual legal case? Is there a court filing that would be public?
yeah, I will get to that. So this is one slide. Okay, so from the zoning officer, so this is from code enforcement. He says, we currently have an open zoning case for the property. Since it's an open case, he can't discuss it. That's why this is so short. He can't discuss open cases. It is going through the legal system. He can tell us that. He understands your frustration. He's trying to work on it. But right now he can't say anything because it's an open case. But I did hear from Development Services Director Bill Pepperoni. So this is what he sent me today. So they have been in contact with the property owners repeatedly to keep the property and the building secure. Because of the owner's consistent failure to do this, the city staff would like to move forward with demolition of the building, but it requires a court order. They can't just go and demolish someone else's building. So the city attorney's office and the chief building official have been working on a petition to the court. We've received an estimate from a contractor for the demolition, and they're prepared to move forward with that if the court will approve our petition. They anticipate filing the petition this week. Caveat. Getting a judge to agree to let the city knock down a building is very hard. So they wanted you to know that. They have records of police calls. The chief building inspector has inspected the building. And so right now they have to convince the judge that it is dangerous. For example, the roasted artichoke building that used to be right there where that empty space is, the city was able to get that demolished because bricks were falling into the sidewalk. But think of how long the old academy, Brigham Young Academy, how many decades that was up. And so they're trying, but they're saying it's very hard for a judge to say, yes, you can come in and demolish someone else's property.
So I'd be curious, if he isn't doing anything with the building, he probably isn't paying his property taxes either.
We can go on the county website and see.
If he's not paying his property taxes, the city can foreclose and sell it for the property taxes, can't they?
I'm not sure.
I don't know at what point taxes are delinquent enough for the city.
I'm not sure. And he could be paying his property taxes. I don't know. I can check the county website and let you know.
Yeah.
But, and anyone can go online and check the county website on that. Okay, and then our last item was actually a mistake. This was supposed to go on the District 3 agenda, but in case you're interested in the Provo River channel, this is a problem they have on the west side of Provo, is where they moved the Provo River. And so kind of where the old Provo River was is kind of this stagnant body of water, and then they moved it to a new place. We always get a lot of complaints on that. The problem is, this is not a Provo City project, and it's not on Provo City land. So this is a combined county, state, and federal project on county land. But they did want people to know that they've added aeration systems to improve the oxygen levels. So they've got 36 oxygen releasing diffusers along the riverbed. And, but the main problem is the diversion structure has been impacted by high flows and floating debris. We've had all that runoff this year, and so it's bringing a lot of debris with it, and it's blocking those aerators. And they've also had a lot of problems with vandalism in the area. Kids are going in, cutting locks, damaging gates. And so it makes it harder for them to do the work to improve that area. There is a website that you can go to that has excellent updates, provoriverdelta.us. They also have a phone number and an email if you have questions. They also talked about mosquitoes on the west side, because of the rising lake levels, it's given it larger breeding ground. And the mosquito spraying is done through the Utah County Mosquito Abatement. And there's a phone number where you can call and ask for them to spray or ask for them to not spray, depending on your point of view. And, or you can do it over the website and request. So kind of they're working on it. There's not much, they asked if the city could do more for this. The city can't. It's not the city's property and it's not the city's project. So we don't really have any say in it, but that's where people can find information. But my apologies, I stuck this in on your agenda. It was supposed to go on the west side agenda. But in case you're wondering about mosquitoes in the lake.
It's in an exciting turn of events, we're actually on time. We have 10 minutes for public comment. If anyone has anything they'd like to say.
Okay, so Slate Canyon Park. So I emailed Katrina, she's not here anymore. And I got a response back from the recreation director. The long story or the reading between the lines seems to be that there are no plans to really do anything there until 2029. And I am just a little frustrated because I've been living in this area for 30 years now. And it just seems like Provo, that Slate Canyon Park just keeps getting pushed down to the bottom of the list, bottom of the list, bottom. It's always at the bottom of the list. And I'm wondering what we can do to get it moved up. You know, what we can do to organize as a neighborhood, as a district, whatever, to do that, because there are not really very close parks in that Provost neighborhood, in that Spring, you know, Creek area, in that Slate Canyon area. I mean, it's not like you can walk to a park. You have to get in your car and drive to Bicentennial or all the way into Kiwanis. So I'm just a little frustrated that I'm hearing about, oh, we need to do updates here and we need to do updates here. Now we're building this big, huge thing over the west side, which that's fine. It's gonna bring a lot of money. That's awesome. But what about us? I mean, and you know, this new development is going in. Can that, I mean, he said something about that we need development money to go into park. Well, if that's in our neighbor area, can that money be earmarked for our area, not to go into the general park recreation fund for every other part of the city?
Are you talking about the top of Bicentennial Park? Is that what you're talking about? The Slate Canyon? No?
No. No, I'm talking about the one that's up by the trailhead.
Okay.
We've been, I mean, for the last 30 years, and I've got emails going back long time. The most recent one is from, you know, Richard White from about 3 or 4 years ago, saying we need to talk to the city. They're talking about this. It used to be on the master plan, then they took it off the master plan. But it was supposed to have like tennis courts. It was supposed to have like a playground area. It was supposed to have a restroom, you know, and we've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And now it's 5 more years, which will then turn into 5 more years, you know, which means that, you know, everyone else is getting, oh, now we can't do it because we have to upgrade this other one that we built 10 years ago when you were still waiting. I'm just saying, why is it taking so long? And I understand that there's grants that we can get. Okay. I can help write grants, but point me in the right direction to do it, because I just don't see that there is the will in the city to make our area as important as the west side, as the northeast side, as, you know, every other part of the city. Ours, you know, we don't get the enforcement for all the crazy stuff going on, and we don't get a park. It's like, fine, don't enforce, but can we have a park? You know, I'm sorry.
Right. Or parking.
Yeah, parking.
Garrett, do you have an answer for us? Rachel, do you have an answer?
I'm happy to talk to Doug Robbins and get a better feel for what has been jumping up and down this priority schedule. Great questions. And I know he has a master plan. I don't know what goes into prioritizing different projects, but I'm happy to dive into that.
I can forward you the email that he sent me. But
great.
like what I said, reading between the lines of that, it's, there are 10 other projects ahead of that one again. And there are always 10 other projects ahead of that one. We get done with, you know, 5 projects, and it would seem like ours would, you know, be up to the top. No, 5 other ones jump ahead of us again. And like I said, I've been in this area 30 years. I am getting just a little tired of being told that my park is not a priority for the city, and every other park in the city is.
Great
Hey,
comments.
we're writing you in the notes, Garrett. I did the notes. What else?
I had a question, as we were talking about that abandoned property on 900 East. There's the property across the street that they did demolish. Is that owned by the same person, or are we
Yes.
gonna, so we're not gonna expect anything built there anytime soon?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that like is like burned down halfway?
No, it's.
They kind of
Like
dug it
pouring
out
out.
a little bit. It's just
I like, sound like they were doing something.
like they started and then they stopped, so it has the fencing up around it. Okay.
Like by the gas station?
No, it's up
Right,
closer to
yeah,
BYU.
By the BYU fuel.
It's at ninth
Oh,
floor.
Fuel station, yeah.
Between 900 North and North and West.
I have a comment from Christina Davis, who's on.
Hi, Christina.
Okay, so she says, sorry, I had to mute everyone because these teenage boys were taking over my Zoom call. So I apologize for the music coming in. They were dressing up as cows. It was crazy. Okay. So the good news, this is from Christina Davis. The good news for Slate Canyon Park is that a landscape architecture firm has been hired and developing plans. The Y includes the Public Works Department that must redo the flood zone for spring runoff. It is millions of dollars and a very extensive project to redo the flood zone so that all flood runoff will be directed to the west side of Slate Canyon Drive. The east side of Slate Canyon Drive will now be developed into park space, including pickleball courts and biking.
And I've heard that before too, but when the email that I got from Doug Robbins suggests that it's not a priority. So that's what I've heard too, and I've heard that for the last 10 years.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom?
Christina, do you, oh, did she type it? I know, I think the boys are gone now. They told me the meeting was boring. We needed to stop.
Rolling.
Yeah, so okay, Christina, you can talk now.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and thank you for your wonderful question. So, as the neighborhood representative, I was invited to 2 Provo Public Works Department meetings about the Slate Canyon Park as they tried to move forward. And you're right that it's super frustrating because at one time, a landscape architecture firm had been hired and they drafted a 4-stage plan, but the water runoff was not adequate in their landscaping plan, and so it had to be redone. It is very expensive and extensive. Underneath the area that would be the Slate Canyon Park is a major water line to Spanish Fork, and it's an 8-foot diameter water line. So there's extensive utilities in that area as well as the large power poles. So when you overlay all the different public works things, it makes the park extremely difficult. So I myself have been an advocate for collecting public support to move this up the priority list. And so I came to understand that it has to first be moved up in the top 5 of the public works priority before it can be on the parks and recreation priority. So for the last 8 years, Provo Parks and Rec have been asking us to show solidarity in public support. And one of the best ways to do that is to get matching grant funds from businesses. So the Rock Canyon Alliance has been a great example of doing this. Millions and millions of dollars of matching grants has helped move the Rock Canyon trailhead and park system forward. Then there were other government grants. I've even written letters personally for grants for the Rock Canyon area because they were at a position where they could utilize the grant money that they got. Whereas for Slate Canyon Park, we have not been in a position where we could utilize funds. But if you would mind making sure that Ashley has your name in the minutes, I would love to work with you on gathering neighborhood support. Our neighborhood is expanding. There are more residents than we've ever had, and it's a great time for us to band together and show that public support. And once again, finances and resources speak loudly. If we can encourage businesses to put money towards this, we can help with intermediate improvements. And I know that the Parks Department has given us the equivalent of thousands of dollars in the last 4 years of Slate Canyon Saturday in devoting Provo City Park staff to cleaning up on the Slate Canyon Saturdays that we've had. So it might be invisible, but the Parks Department has been amazing. They have actually given us so much of resources that were not originally in their budget. And I think all of us would admit that there's less mattresses, old water heaters, and garbage dumped there. So thank you to the whole community that's helped make Slate Canyon a much more desirable place for recreation.
Thank you. Great. And we are out of time, 7:45. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.